Hey guys, welcome back to Loft Sports. It's Tyler coming at you with the Notre Dame Virginia Tech review for the game on Saturday. Wow, another nail biter as predicted. Notre Dame once again finds themselves in a dogfight with a team that realistically probably shouldn't have been anywhere that close. A lot to take away from this game, but first and foremost, Notre Dame is very fortunate to have gotten a win in that game. My keys were want it more, number one. That was the number one key. Credit to Virginia Tech. They dominated that game. From the moment that the ball was fumbled going into the end zone right before half, instead of it being 21-7 Notre Dame, it's 14-14, and Virginia Tech came out in the second half and acted like they wanted that game vastly more than the Irish did. Notre Dame was fortunate to be in a position to win that game. Book is still having a very tough time. I'll talk more about that in a minute. And we still cannot run the football. I think we had 100 yards rushing, and 50 of that was Ian Book scrambling and just making things happen with his feet. We've got to find a way to run the football. I mean, we get down inside the 5-yard line, 2 plays in a row, they stone us, and then we fumble the ball and they run it back 99 yards for a touchdown. Great teams don't do that. That's just inexcusable. You've got to be able to score that touchdown there. That totally turned the game around, and for all intents and purposes, it should have cost us the game. Virginia Tech deserved to win. They played better. We got a little bit of help from the refs. You know, I'm not going to deny there were some really bad calls in the second half. Now, granted, there were some bad calls that went against us too, but there was a couple drives there in the fourth quarter where we were able to get down the field because of a questionable roughing the passer call that took an interception away from them. So I'm not saying that's the reason we won, but it certainly didn't help Virginia Tech's case anyway. So lot to take away from this game, and this team still alive for a potential New Year's Six Bowl, but wow, it was not what we expected, or maybe it was what we expected at this point. This is just what we've come to know from Notre Dame under Coach Kelly. You know, we have a really good team, and there's flashes in the pan. You know, last year they were able to put it all together and win all 12 games, and then they ran into a buzzsaw with Clemson. I think there's still more to that than meets the eye. I think last year's Notre Dame team was a pretty good team. Clemson was just tearing people apart at the end of the season. But for most of the other years, Notre Dame's been very average at times and very below average at times. Virginia Tech, yeah, they were 5-2, but they're not a great team. They don't have elite players. They got a couple of decent players, but their quarterback's not anything special. They really can't run the football like the Virginia Tech under Frank Beamer 10 years ago. So I'm not really sure how to feel. I'm glad we won the game, but at the same time, I kind of feel like we probably didn't deserve it. So let's get to my takeaways here in just a second. Number one, Coach Kelly may have peaked at Notre Dame. I've heard a lot of people talking on blogs this week. I had a lengthy conversation or two with my dad right before and following the game on Friday and Saturday. It may be time for Kelly and Notre Dame to just mutually agree that he's done all he can do in South Bend and move on. I mean, the guy has restored a little bit of the glory. He's taken us undefeated through the regular season on 2 separate occasions, of which we've gone into playoff or national championship settings and gotten absolutely curb stomped. Granted, the teams we played in those times were vastly superior and had an enormous amount of NFL talent. But let's be honest, is Notre Dame where we think we should be? To some degree, yeah. I mean, this isn't 1980 anymore. There's only a couple of teams that are really dominating year in and year out, and Notre Dame, quite frankly, is not one of those teams. Unless you're Ohio State or Alabama or Clemson, and to a lesser degree Oklahoma, it's really hard to win 11 and 12 games in this modern era of college football. There's scholarship limitations. There's more talent equally spread out across the board. You don't have to only play 2 or 3 games anymore, unless you're Alabama, to get into the national stage in the college football playoff. Every game on any given schedule is tougher than it was 20, 25, 30 years ago when we were running the show and winning national championships every other year. It just is. Your games against Iowa State and Navy and Cincinnati and East Carolina and A, B, C, D, insert team here are just harder. Teams can beat anybody on any given Saturday. We saw Ohio State lose some head-scratching games over the years to Purdue and average Virginia Tech teams. It just is what it is. It's hard to go undefeated in college football, and at Notre Dame, when you're not in a conference, you kind of have to go 12-0 in a 4-team playoff to have any shot at getting in. It's just that simple. An 11-1 Notre Dame team, no matter what their schedule looks like, is going to have a really hard time not getting in. And quite frankly, I think Kelly has done all he can do in South Bend. He's recruited some really good teams. He's put some really good players in the NFL. There's a lot more NFL players that went to Notre Dame than there was in the Willingham, Weiss, and Bob Davie era before him. So to some degree, he's helped restore some of Notre Dame's fame and glory. But at the same time, I just wonder that if maybe he hasn't hit that ceiling and there's really nowhere else he can go from here. Number 2, this team, again, this has been a trend with Kelly teams in his era. They just lack the ability to beat average teams handily. I don't want to sit here and rag on Virginia Tech, but the truth is they're just not that good of a team. Are they a 7 or 8 win team? Yeah, but the ACC is also hot garbage. It's just, Alabama doesn't do this. You know, these elite teams don't, Ohio State doesn't jack around with these teams on a week-to-week basis. Yeah, they might have one game a season where they come out sleepy and they take a second half to pull away, but my God, Alabama's putting in their 4th-string players at the start of the 4th quarter in most of these games. When they play Ole Miss or Tennessee, they put these teams away early because they can run the football and their players just make plays. They don't allow these teams to hang around, fumble the ball going into the end zone, a 99-yard scoop and score, and then the game takes a turn, and now in the second half you're just holding on for dear life like we do every single week. We should be beating Virginia Tech by 2 or 3 touchdowns with the talent we have compared to them. Coach Kelly's in his 9th or 10th season at Notre Dame. We should be further along than I feel like we are, and some of those things are just under Kelly's plate. That falls on him. He's got to coach these guys up a little bit better than he has. We should be able to beat average teams more handily. And then the last takeaway, I've been hard on them, so I want to throw a little positivity under it. We did find a way to win this game. There's a lot of other teams out there, including my alma mater of Nebraska right now, that are going through a hard season, and at least Notre Dame didn't quit. I mean, this team could have rolled up, said, you know what, the season's just over. Let's just pack it in. Guys could have been looking out for their own futures in the NFL draft coming up in the spring. At least the defense gave the offense one more chance. They came out, they got the stop they needed. We used our timeouts wisely. We got the ball back, and give Ian Book a little credit. He's played terrible over really over the course of the entire season. But the kid did put together and manufacture a drive to go down and score, and he ran the ball in, and he celebrated with his team and the crowd down there in the corner. So these are college kids, and that's one thing we have to realize. These aren't NFL players. These aren't guys getting paid millions of dollars. These are kids that go to class, and they have to live with student body talking about him. Well, there's Book. You know, he played like trash against Michigan last Saturday. I couldn't imagine having walked around on campus in college, looking around and know everybody's talking about me and how terrible I played last weekend or whatever. So I don't want to just destroy these kids because they're just that. They're still college kids, and at least they found a way to win this game. It feels like it should have been a lot better of a win, but at the end of the day, a win is a win. There's still a lot that can become of this season. If they go 10-2 and we go to a big bowl game and finally beat somebody in a meaningful bowl game, which we have not done since the early 90s, then they can at least salvage this season, and it'll have at least been, people will say, hey, maybe this is where it turned the corner. So there's still hope for that. We're sitting at 6-2. We got 4 games left. Duke is next up. I'm going to actually be at that game. I live out here in North Carolina. I've got tickets. Me and Seth are actually going to go to the game Saturday night. I'm really excited. It'll be the first time in a couple of years I'll get to see Notre Dame in person. So I'll have more on that in the preview video later this week. Thank you guys so much. This is Tyler for Loft Sports signing off. Go Irish.